Good morning. I hope it is a happy Thursday for you so far. It is May 7th, which is crazy that there's already been a full week in May. I feel like even though we're kind of in the midst of all this, I honestly feel like time has flown by. Yesterday we talked about Jeremiah. We kind of continued talking about, how we deal with loss and pain and mourning. This morning we're going to talk about somebody that we're pretty familiar with, which is the Apostle Paul. Because I think if anybody in the Bible was familiar with loss, with pain, with suffering, you could say it was him. His life, really, from when he met Jesus to even his death, it's a pretty intense life. But as you read his writings, which is most of the New Testament, and you kind of read about his life, he doesn't seem necessarily like a man who was suffering. He seems like he's filled with joy. He even goes on to say he's happy to go through those things. He never gives up hope. He never swerves from God. He never goes away from God. He continues on his mission to spread the gospel of Jesus as far around the world as he possibly could. And so the story that I want to read today is from Acts 16. I kind of want to set the scene before I read it. Paul and his friend Silas, they've been arrested, they've been beaten, they've been thrown into prison. And you got to think, they didn't commit a crime. What they had done was they had set a slave girl free from a demon that had been tormenting her. And so, as you're going to see, these guys had been severely beaten. They've been shackled to a wall in a dark pit in a dungeon, basically. And so they begin praying and singing to God. And this is a pretty popular story from Acts. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure my first reaction would be, if I were Paul, or even if I were Silas, to pity myself. To complain. To talk about how unfair everything was. Like, I didn't do anything wrong. Why am I here? But Paul doesn't do that. Paul maintains his focus on Jesus. And so then God supernaturally intervenes. He does this miracle. He sets all the prisoners free. This massive earthquake opens all the cell doors. But Paul still thinks of other people. He doesn't go with the crowd. He stays put so that the jailer will not get in trouble. In fact, in this story, the jailer is about to kill himself because he knew he was going to be in deep trouble for all these prisoners leaving. And that's basically the punishment for letting these prisoners escape. Paul maintains his focus on others. And I believe that this is one of the keys to his ability to stay joyful despite experiencing pain, suffering, loss after loss after loss in his life. And so even though I basically explained it, I'm going to read this. Acts chapter 16, starting in verse 25, I'm going to read down to verse 30. It says, about midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them. Suddenly there was such a violent earthquake that the foundations of the prison were shaken. At once all the prison doors flew open, and everyone's chains came loose. The jailer woke up, and when he saw the prison doors open, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself because he thought the prisoners had escaped. But Paul shouted, "Don't harm yourself, we are all here." The jailer called for lights, rushed in, and fell trembling before Paul and Silas. He then brought them out and asked, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" We face loss, we face pain, we have suffering. And when those things happen to us, where is our focus? I think our natural tendency when these things happen, and I'm speaking to myself just as much as anybody else who's watching this, our natural tendency is to focus inward. We focus on our pain. We focus on our feelings, how it isn't fair to us that we're going through these things. And even though I talked yesterday about how it's more than appropriate and it's even healthy to mourn and to feel sadness, the thing is we can't stay stuck there. Once we've laid, our hearts before God and we're honest with Him and He wants that, it's then time to shift our focus back to other people. It's then time to shift our focus back to God. But think about what Paul did. Paul is focusing on other people, so let that be our challenge today. How, who do we know in our life right now that are struggling? How might God use you to make a difference in their life? When we keep our eyes off of ourselves, I think we're able to kind of live with that unwavering hope and joy that we see in the life of Paul, like in this story. And I don't know about you, but that's the life I would like to be known to live. I can't sit there and say I'm great at it. I can't even sit there and say that I do it all the time. But that is something I would like to be known to live. I'm going to close like I sort of did yesterday with another scripture. This is from 1 Peter chapter 3, starting in verse 15. Let me get there we go. And I kind of want this to be our challenge today. So 1 Peter 3, verse 15 says, "But in your hearts revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect." Focus on the other people. Focus on others. Yes, we might be going through something, and let's be honest with God about it, but let's move past that. Let's then put our focus on other people. Let's put our focus on God. Let's continue that mission and continue to give other people the hope that we have. That is your challenge for today. I hope that's an encouragement for you. I hope that you will do that today. Think about those people in your life that are struggling, and reach out to them. Love on them the best way that you can. But anyways, that's all I have, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.